Open hack was amazing.
Good.
Got some work done, met some people, got a coach.
Nice.
Got 2 coaches.
Awesome. We learn anything fun at Open Hack? Did we make good progress on our homework? Did we learn anything on Monday? How are we feeling about entity relationship diagrams and general database design? We feeling like we know what the next steps are for our capstone and starting to think through the database for our capstone? How are we feeling on all of that?
Trying to catch up and put it together.
Someone knocking. Give me 1 second.
That's crazy. Christy, where you at, girl? Christy.
Nicole.
Sorry about that, guys.
Well, I was asking about you yesterday. Everybody kept asking about apprenticeship. There was new people. And I was like, Christy will be here. She'll be able to tell you. I'm like, I can't tell you.
Why didn't you ask Larry? Larry is in it too.
Oh no, I was saying, remember how you was telling us there was one that you had like clicked on, there was another one and stuff like that. I was trying to.
Oh, you just mean apprenticeships in general.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm not the guru, but I did know about that one.
All right. Any comments, any things that we want to cover before we dive into class tonight? Any questions about any outstanding homework, anything we've learned so far? Okie doke. So we are going to dive in tonight. This looks like a very light outline. Trust me, you will be begging for mercy before the end of the class. We've got a lot of stuff to cover because today's the first day we get into true full stack, right? So, you know, all the fetch requests we've made and, you know, working with the New York Times and working with the server that Ryan set up. Now we actually get to make those servers. Now we get to learn about our endpoints and how data is flowing and how we send data in our front end and get it in our back end. And then what do we do with that data? Do we just store it in the server? Do we connect to a database? Did I forget to? No, I did make it so anyone can view it. Zach, is it not loading like the link, or can you not see it on my screen?
I can see it on your. I can see it on your screen. It's when I go into Canvas, it just says week 16, day 1.
Oh, okay. Let me add that in really quickly then. I will dump it in the chat as well, just so a little easier. Let me week 16, day 3 outline. Sorry, I'm normally one step ahead here, but I forgot to link. Okay, now you should be good to go. If you refresh in Canvas, you can also get to it. Okay, so we dive in today using the stack. So I just want to give everyone context at where we're at, because we're going to be doing a lot of switching back and forth. If you guys think you have become master window managers at this point, I really hope you're feeling like that, because we're about to juggle our front end code and our front end browser that's running that code, our back end code and the terminal that's running for that back end code, plus our database server and Beekeeper to see what data is actually getting stored and where it's flowing. So, you know, all of this debugging up until this point where it's told you broken on line 26 and you go to line 26 and you know, I forgot a comma or a parenthesis or whatever. Now this becomes even harder because the places that our code could break could be in the front end and it could be in the console, could be in the back end and in that terminal window, or it could be in our database. And we need to be able to monitor the flow of data across all of them. The good news is this is all about JavaScript, right? We write a lot of JavaScript in our front end, a lot of JavaScript in our back end, and a lot of JavaScript to interact with our database and run our SQL. So if you are feeling like, all right, I feel like I still don't fully have my head around JavaScript, the good news is now is your time to get a little bit more practice with it, right? So that syntax, even though you may not feel fully there, now you're getting the exposure to using it not only in the front end and in React, but also in the back end as well. So let me go through this diagram because I think that this is really important to keep in mind. We've got this client here, right? The client is our web browser or your laptop, right? So the first step is step one. Step one is a fetch request. We say, hey, backend server. Our node server, we're gonna be learning a framework called Express. I would like to make a request to you. Now that request may be processed and the response may be sent directly back to the laptop. We may not need the database. We may say, you gave us this input, we are giving you this output. Any of that input is coming in the request. Any of the output is going back in the response, right? But oftentimes when we work with a backend server, we also have a database server that we connect to. So when that happens, we modify the flow a little bit. The request comes in to the server gets that request and goes, oh, I need the database to get some of this. So we run a query in our database. Our database then has the result of the query that gets sent back to the server. Now, at that point, we may format the data a little differently. We may decide that we need to make another query. We may realize that we have to send an email. There are all different kinds of things that we can do in our backend. But ultimately, the backend server, the API server, has to respond to the request. So the request was the fetch that came in on number 1. Now we need to respond to that with number 4 with the response, right? Now, when we send that back to our laptop, we could do any number of things, right? If it was like the New York Times project, we would use inner HTML and our document object model and get that data to display. If we did that in React, we would use a set state, right? And we would say, okay, now we need to show that data. Let's set it into state and have our React rerun or re-render the return and have that data show up. So the goal today is to get our first Express server running, to build a very lightweight React front end so that we can interact with our database or our API server, and to talk about the different ways that we can send data to the backend. And that last part hopefully is a little bit of a review, right? So we're going to be using route parameters and the body, and we're also going to use query parameters. And hopefully that's all somewhat of a reminder of what Ryan taught as well, right? Of sending data to the backend and dealing with it from there. Any questions on this diagram or the general flow of data before we actually dive into our code? By the way, Latonia is continuing to be our TA this week, so if you have any questions, hit her up. I know Karen and Ariel are graduates of previous cohorts who wanted to sit in and have these topics recovered. So if you have any questions, Latonia is your point person. Okay, let's dive right on in. So to get started, we need to set up a React project. I'm sorry, a Node project. So hopefully this is a little bit of a review for you guys. I'm going to open my terminal and I am going to blow this up. And first things first, whenever we open the terminal, of course, we want to pwd to figure out where we're at. I'm in my user folder, which is where we normally start. So I'm going to ls and see that I've got my desktop. I'm going to cd down to my desktop. I'm going to ls again and see that I've got my code folder here. So I'm going to cd c3 and I'm going to use my tab judiciously, right? So I don't need to type in the dash my code. I can just hit tab and it's going to auto complete that for me. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to ls again. And I know that we are in week, what are we in? Week 16? Is that right? And it doesn't look like I have a week 16 folder yet. So what is the command I'm going to run to make a week 16 folder?
mkdir.
You got it. I'm going to make a directory folder. They mean the same thing. And I'm going to say W16 and hit enter. If you already had a week 16 folder, you do not need to make it. You can just cd into it. Now that we have made the folder, that does not mean we are now in that folder. We have just made it. So if we run ls again, now we can see my week 16 folder exists. So I'm going to cd into my week 16. And I am going to repeat that process again. I'm going to mkdir d3 and then cd into my day 3. And right when you thought we have made it all the way down to our last folder, we have to make 2 more folders because we are now doing 2 different projects here. Our front end and back end are going to be in 2 separate folders. Now, that is not necessarily the case for all projects. In some projects, the back end code actually also stores the front end code. But in this situation, we're going to keep them separate. Our React front end is going to be in one folder, and our Node back end is going to be in another folder. We aren't going to worry about the React front end right now. We're just going to get started with our Node backend. Zach, we haven't gotten into Node yet. Once we do, it will become apparent of how we got our Node server running again. So what I'm going to do is I'm in my CD day 3. I'm going to mkdir one more time, and I am going to create my add server. And this server is going to be all about adding 2 numbers together. So I'm going to create my add server. I'm going to cd into my add server. And now that we have finally made it down, I can run pwd, see my entire path. And now I want to open this in VS Code. So if you have the code command installed, you can just hit code space period enter. And that will automatically pop open your VS Code with our add server working over here. However, if you do not have that code command installed, you can run open space period. And now I have this empty folder here. I can take that folder and just drag that in my doc down to the VS Code icon. Or, of course, we can just open VS Code and go File, Open Folder, and get to it that way.
Can you just repeat the terminal one?
You're going to do open space period. And then that will open that folder in VS Code. I'm sorry, in Finder. And then you can take that empty folder and just drag it to the VS Code icon in your doc, and that will pop it open.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've got add server over here. I'm going to go up to terminal and say new terminal, and that's going to pop us open into the add server. And now we need to get our NPM set up. Yes, Larry, the number for 911 is 911.
Too funny.
There shouldn't be any MBP command. This is just what my computer is called. Let me pull up the terminal. All we basically did was created a bunch of folders here, and there's no reason why you couldn't do all of this in Finder. But the idea here is that you get practice using the terminal, because when you get into full stack development, you'll be working on the server and you won't have an option for Finder. You will have to use something like the terminal when you connect to the server. Command tilde opens the terminal. You can also go to terminal up at the top and drop down into new terminal. Looks like mine is set to Control Shift tilde for some reason, but however you get to it is fine. I just went to terminal and new terminal up at the top. And all of the folder creation commands, I'm just going to screenshot this and dump this into the live share so that you can reference that as soon as, let me grab it here. Dump that in. Okay, we got 2 more commands, and then I will take a quick break and pull everyone to make sure everyone is up to date. So we've got our ad server open in our VS Code. What we are going to do is run npm init. And now if we run npm init and just hit enter on that, it's going to ask us a bunch of questions. But I don't want it to ask all the questions. I want it to just use the default responses for all of them. So I'm going to add in a -y there. And when I hit enter, it just creates a package.json file for me over here. And it uses the default name of the folder, and it gets us set up so that we can start npm installing some packages. So it is entirely possible to use Node on its own. However, there is a framework called Express, and Express is really a framework that lets you run Node servers and makes it more easy to set up what we call endpoints, right? So Express is a framework for Node that allows us to easily write endpoints. So Stephanie, there's nothing that comes before npm init. It's npm init --y, and that's what's going to create our package.json folder for us. Once we have a package.json, that means we can start npm installing packages. So if you've got a package.json, you've got your terminal open, the first thing we are going to do is install Express. So we're going to do npm I, or you can spell out install. If you do I, it's just a shortcut for the word install. They both do the same exact thing. And then we are going to install Express. Now, Express should install pretty quickly. If you ever wanted more details about Express, you could always go to npmjs.com and do a search for Express. This top match is what we are working with here. Express was downloaded only 11 million times this week alone. So it's pretty safe to assume that Express is a widely used package. In fact, I would say it is probably one of the top 10 most used NPM packages that are available. It is a Node. It is a framework for Node, meaning we're building right on top of it. And they've got this getting started. And we're actually going to do this, but instead of just copying and pasting it, we're going to get practice. We're going to get practice doing typing this out by hand. But what you should have, and I'm going to launch a poll now and go into questions. If everything's set up properly, you should have a node modules over here on the left. You should have a package.json. And in that package.json, it should have a dependencies and have Express in there. So that's what we're going for in this poll, making sure you've got a package.json, you can open it, see the dependencies, and see Express in there. Poll is launched. Zach, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I got stuck trying to.
Okay, so you don't have the code command installed. So instead, just do open period space. I'm sorry, open space period. And then take that add server folder and just drag it to the VS Code icon in your doc. Okay, and then from here, you can open a new terminal with terminal, no, sorry, terminal up at the top, not under file. Terminal in your menu bar. There you go, new terminal. Now you are going to run npm init. Just npm init, no run. Init, INIT, space, dash. Oh, that's fine. If you forget the dash Y, it asks you a bunch of these questions. If you just keep hitting enter, it will use the default value for all of them, which is fine. And now you've got your package.json. So from here, you can run your npm install express without the run. Sorry, whenever we execute a command, it's called running the command. So whenever I say like run whatever, I mean like run space colon quotes, here's the command you're going to run. And now if you open your package.json, you'll see that there's a dependency section in there that has express written out. So you are all caught up.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I fell behind because I forgot what cons or terminal was called. I wasn't finding it in applications because I was searching the
No
wrong.
problem. And it's stupid that it's in the utilities folder instead of applications itself. So that can be even more confusing. Danielle, go ahead with your question.
Okay, Max, you know my situation with my laptop. So I'm on the Windows laptop and I am questioning what week did we do the node download so that I can go back to that and do that really quickly and I'll catch up with you guys later.
If you go to, I don't know what week we did it. And I think it's going to be quicker to figure out how to do it than it is to find that video. So what I would do is go to nodejs.org, click on the downloads button, and then download the Windows installer, and go from there. The only thing I will tell you is while you're going through that installer, if there is an option to like add to path or set up in terminal or configure in command prompt or something like that, you will want to use that option. The other thing that I will caution you of is that the terminal commands that we use, like mkdir, don't line up with the same commands the Windows command prompt uses. So what I would suggest is that you install Node on Windows, and then instead of trying to create all the folders that we did in command prompt, just create them in regular like File Explorer.
Okay, I got you. I had already figured that much out. I had created the folders and then from there I'll find the website. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And if you're running into problems, Danielle, I know if you run into problems, I know you might fall a little bit behind, but during the break, I can try and help you catch up on the Windows specific stuff.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? We've got 9 votes in.
Yes, me, Max. I got stuck. Can I share my screen? Sorry.
You sure can.
Okay. I am stuck after downloading the JSON package. I'm not sure the next.
Okay, so you npm initted, which is good. You're one step away from catching up to us. All you need to do is npm space I is short for install, space, and then you're going to type in express and hit enter. And that will very quickly install express for you. And now when you open up your package.json, you'll see there's a dependency section that has express written out. So that means that express has been successfully installed and you are all caught up.
Thank you.
What are you talking about? Caroline's dead. Doesn't make the ring yours.
Other questions? Wayne, you need to just go file open folder and pop open the ad server. Yeah, so if you just that works. So in your terminal down at the bottom, you need to run npm space init space -y and hit enter. That -y is to use all the defaults, and then you can npm I express. Enter, and then pop open your ad server over in the Explorer on the left navbar area and open your package.json. And from there, you will see you've got Express installed and you are good to go. Nicole, open editors is like if you open a file without opening a folder first, VS Code will try and like open the editor for that file instead of like having the whole folder open. So if you accidentally open a file directly in VS Code without opening the folder that it's in first, it will go under the open editor section. Okay, any other questions? Whoever voted I'm lost, hopefully you are not lost at this point. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okie doke. Moving on. So we've got Express installed. Now we actually have to write some of our Express code, right? So we're going to do a new file and we're going to call it index.js. Now in our index.js, we are going to write our first Express code. So to pull in Express, we need to require it. So we are going to say const express.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a different syntax? Like, is there something I should brace myself for? Or...
This is all JavaScript.
Okay.
So we're going to say const express, and we are going to require express. Now, to note here, require and imports are very similar concepts. They're achieving the same thing. React is a little bit more in the forefront there. They are using what is called ES6 modules, which means we can use the import and the from syntax. Node is catching up to that. However, when Node was first created, that ES6 module syntax, ES5 module syntax, ES5 or ES6, whatever, that module syntax didn't exist. So when Node was first created, they had to use a different kind of importing. And the importing system that they use is called CommonJS. And CommonJS uses that require instead of the import from syntax. Instead, it uses require. So the newer versions of Node will let you use importing directly, but because the industry is currently in the process of transitioning over from require statements to all import from statements, it's important that we teach both. So just keep in mind, whenever you import something in React, you're going to use the import whatever name I want to import from, and then whatever file path. In any of our backend code, we are going to say const express. That's what we want to, the name that we are importing. And we're going to say equal require express. And what Node knows here is when it hits a require, whatever word coming in here is going to be the name of a package coming from our package.json. So we couldn't just require in Express. We need to npm install it first. But because we npm installed it, now we get access to all of the goodness built into Express. So now that we've got Express set up, we basically need to say, hey, we need a server to use Express, right? We want to create a new Express server. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const server equals Express. Now we have just created our first Express server. Now we need to do something with it. So what we're going to do is we are going to say server. And remember all of those HTTP methods we learned? We learned about post and put and delete and patch. We can use almost any of them here. But what is the most common HTTP method to use?
Get
Get. Right? Whenever we load a web page, any page that we load in the web browser, whether we go to google.com or New York Times or whatever it is, by default, it is doing a GET request. So even though you knew nothing about APIs, you have done thousands of GET requests in your life just by loading a web page in the browser. Now we need to specify a route. That route is saying how do people get to this endpoint, right? How do people run this function that we're about to be working with? When we say slash, that's kind of like an index.html. That's saying when someone doesn't specify a path, this is where I want them to go first. Now, we need to always handle two things in every endpoint. We get access to, whoa, not the emojis. We get access to a request and also a response. So you're going to get really sick of me saying rec-res, because every single endpoint, every single route that we create is going to have the request data coming in and the response data getting sent back to the browser. So now we come into our function, and we know that whatever is coming in those curly braces is what is going to happen every time this endpoint gets requested. So we're going to start out nice and basic. We are going to say res. Res is coming from our response right here. And we are going to res.send. And what are we sending back? Well, of course, hello world, because the gods would smite us if we did not do our first endpoint as hello world. Okay, now we need one final step and we will have officially made our first Express API server. We're doing all of this work, but if I come down to my terminal and I type in node index.js, it immediately stops. It says, all right, great, I node index.js. But we're going to run into a problem there. Our server needs to keep running. It needs to be running in the background, right? Because we need to be able to send API requests to it and get responses. The problem is that it's not running in the background. We told it, hey, go do node index.js, and it went through and it went, great, I've got Express, I've gotten my server, I'm ready to get requests, and I'm done running. So we need one final thing in our code, and that's to tell our Express server, hey, listen for requests. But we need to tell it, just like when we use React, we have localhost 3000. We need to tell it what port to listen to requests on. So we are going to say 3001. Now we're going to using 3001 because we don't want to conflict with React's default port, which is 3000. Now, in order to know all of this is working, we're going to do one final function as part of that listen command, where we say console.log API server is running, hit my endpoints, baby. So now we come down into the terminal. I'm going to run my node index.js. And not only did I get API server is running, but notice I don't have a new spot to type in a terminal command. That's because my server is now running in the background. It is now ready for this request to be accessed. So I'm going to stop and poll, but in order to test all of this, I'm going to go to my browser. I'm going to go to localhost 3001, and I'm going to hit enter, and I should get my hello world. So if you have a hello world in your browser at localhost 3001, you are officially caught up.
Max. Max.
I said yes, and I'm like,
Oh.
go ahead. Why didn't you hear me? I was freaking muted.
Okay, I thought my volume was down. All right. So on line 4, if
Yes.
we were to mistakenly reverse the res and the rec, in the grand schemes of the computer, it wouldn't mean it. It wouldn't make a difference, right?
So it would, because the response is what has the send method built into it. So you can't really send data back to the request. You have to send data back through the response.
Right, but I'm saying, you know, there was something like if we chose a specific name for them, it didn't really matter.
If you wanted to call this request and this response and use response down here, yes, you could totally do that.
Right, but what if I put res first and then req? Everything that I needed the response for, I would actually have to do req if I did it that way?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this would really confuse the heck out of people, because now you could technically do this, but if I saw that in someone else's code, I think I may try to go out and kill them, because then all of a sudden, because we will be using this request here. By the way, do not follow me. No one follow along with what I'm doing here. But if I saw this and I was like, oh, I need to get some data that's coming from the request from the end user, I would have to use res to get the information from the request and would just be utterly confused there. So while I have seen people do something like request and response here and then use the word response, I have never seen these two flipped, because even though you may have called it something else, Express is always going to put the request in the first parameter and the response in the second, no matter what you have named it.
Thank you.
So I'm going to just put these back because this is probably the most common way of doing it. However, if you forget what rec and res is, and you prefer to do like the full name there and spell out request and response, that is fine as long as you are consistent. Stephanie, I'm sorry, go ahead with your question.
I think I broke my terminal and I don't know how to fix it.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen.
Oh my goodness, no. I put a period after node and now it looks way different than what you had on your screen.
Okay, so you actually didn't break it. If you go to your browser and go look at port 3001.
I got that to work, but
okay. So what's happening is your server is still running in the background. So if you go back to your code, you see that you have your console log API servers running, hit my endpoints, baby, but you're actually coming up on what my next point was going to be of when you modify your code. Normally you're used to just hitting the refresh button in the browser and seeing it come up, right? But you're not getting API servers running because our terminal is not auto refreshing our index.js. So what you would need to do is go to your terminal and hit Control-C. That is going to stop the server. Then you want to hit up enter, which is going to rerun your node index.js. And now you're getting your console log.
cool. Thank you.
So next step that we're going to go through is getting our terminal to auto reboot once we make changes to our index.js.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. 5 votes in, going for 10-ish.
Max, what you just did with Stephanie didn't work for me.
Yeah, me either.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Wait a minute, I gotta move some stuff. Where is it? First screen. Share. So you said Control C, right?
Yep, that's gonna get you to a new line. And then you need to start node. So you're gonna do node space index.js and hit enter.
Oh, that's why it didn't work.
Index.js.
Oh. So I gotta do control.
So control C to stop the server.
Okay. Node.
Okay, now you're caught up. And now if you go to your browser and go to
Oh.
localhost colon 3001, you should get your hello world back. Just refresh that page. And you're good to go.
Oh, okay, I gotta correct my spelling. Okay, thanks.
Wayne, do you need help? Go ahead.
Time ago. So I'm getting this arrow. I don't know why.
Okay, so
Did I add it wrong at the wrong?
you're missing a, yeah, look at your server listen. It should be 3001, no parenthesis. At that closing parenthesis that you have on line 8. Go over one from the comma, delete the parenthesis right before the comma. Then save. Now you need a closing parenthesis after line 10. At the end of line 10. Okay, now save. Now hit up, enter, click in there, click in your terminal and hit up, enter. Okay, now you've got a module not found. Did you open up your package.json for me? Okay, that's not the problem. Oh, I see your problem. You created index.js in your node modules folder. So that index.js needs to be dragged out to be at the same level as package.json. So just drag it, take index.js and drag it. Yeah, to right there. Okay, now in your terminal, hit up, enter. Okay.
Okay.
So now that's working. Now go to your browser and go to 3000, and it's 3001, not 3000. And you're good to go.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, any other questions before we move forward here?
Can we put some comments in, or do we not need them right away?
We can comment. So can say pull express in from npm, create an express server using our npm import, create route endpoint or home. And then this also get access to request and response. Then here we are going to say use response to send back words hello world. And this is just ending our endpoint function. Our server this is saying tell express server to listen for requests on port 3001. And then this prints out once the server has booted. Any questions on any of that?
No.
Can you make it a little bit wider and so we can, okay, thanks.
Here, let me just move this down to the next line so it's easier to. Okay. So our browser's great and we got a hello world, but what tool did we use to actually test our APIs?
Now we can't see the comments. Wait a minute.
What tool did we use to test APIs?
Postman.
Was it?
Yep. So we're going to go into Postman. And I got a whole bunch of stuff up that I'm just going to close out of and say don't save.
Can you put the code with the comments in the live share so we can go back to it?
It's already live shared both in the live stream in Slack and in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay. With the comments?
With the comments.
Okay.
You have to open my live share for VS Code, but if you click on that link, you'll be able to get access to the files.
You know what? I forgot all about live share.
Okay, so we are in Postman. I'm gonna hit the little tab, the plus button up here. And that gets me into a new window, right? And so my request URL is going to be HTTP localhost 3001. And if I hit send, I get my hello world back. Okay, that's nothing shocking there. But what we've never been able to do before is say, hey, let's go write our first post request. So in my post request, I'm going to go back over to my code and I'm going to say server dot post. And where we're going to post to, well, we'll post to my first post endpoint. And that is going to get a rec and a res, just like everything else. But now I'm going to res.send, and I'm going to send you posted me. Okay, so now I take my first post endpoint, I put that into my URL here, and then I hit send, and I get back, cannot post my first post endpoint. Well, why not? I created it. I sent something back. Does anyone remember what Stephanie's problem was? When we save this file, the node server does not automatically restart for us. So if I hit Control-C down in my terminal and up enter, it doesn't look like anything has changed. But now if I go back to my Postman and hit send, I get you posted me. All right, that's going to be really freaking annoying that if every time that I modify my file, I need to go back to the terminal and restart the server. So we are going to install another NPM package that helps us with that. So I'm going to Control-C out of my terminal. And I'm going to npm install nodemon. All one word, Nodemon. Now that we've got nodemon installed, instead of typing in node index.js, instead I am going to start node what? Scratch that. In our terminal, Control C, we do not need to install NodeMon. Let me just get rid of that really quickly. What we are going to do is we're going to use our old friend NPX. When did we use NPX last?
To install Node.
To create React app, right? So Node we installed on our computer so we can use Node anytime. But we use NPX to create React app, right? The NPM is our node package manager. That's when we want to install things. However, when we just want something to execute, we use NPX, X for execute. So what we're going to do in our add server is we are going to, instead of running node index.js and hitting enter, instead what we're going to do is say NPX nodemon. Hey, NPX, go execute this command called nodemon. And it says, need to install the following packages. So I'm going to say Y and enter, and it's going to install nodemon for me. And now I get my API servers running, hit my endpoints, baby. Okay, well, if I go over to my Postman and hit send, I get you posted me. But now, because we started the server using nodemon instead of node directly, if I modify my res.send and say, and now with auto updating and save, you notice what happened down here in my terminal, restarting due to changes. That means when I come back over to my Postman and hit send, I now get, and now with auto updating. Okay, so let's stop there. Let's poll. Let's make sure everyone's good. Let's make sure we get anyone who's lost, unlost. Zach, you've had your hand up for about an hour now. It must be sore. Go ahead with your question.
Well, I found the first part in Postman. I forgot to put the colon in when I put in localhost, so that's why that wasn't working. But when I hit send, I'm getting like doc type HTML cannot get / my first post endpoint.
Okay, so that's, you have to change your get up here to a post.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
It's not like I just did 14 steps or anything. Man, it is pouring here.
It just stopped over here.
Oh,
It's
Syracuse weather.
over here.
Can I see your VS Code?
Oh, sorry, let me.
When you finish, can I see the Postman again? Behind.
So Wayne, if you need anything from this, just open my live share, just because it's, you can reference it directly there. In Postman, we've got our get here changed to a post. We've got HTTP : localhost 3001 / my first endpoint. And that is all we should need to do. So when you hit send here, it should show up in the body down here as you posted me.
Post, send that. No, I did not get that.
So make sure that you've got your server running with nodemon over here, the npx space nodemon enter. If it tells you it needs to install it, just hit Y enter. And that's what's going to make our server automatically reboot. So if we run into, if we change any of our code, we don't need to stop the server and restart the server. Node mon is going to automatically do that for us. So very important to know the difference between node, which is the server itself, and node mon, which is the utility that reboots the node server for us.
Can you just make sure my response is coming out of Postman?
Do you see you posted me here? Okay. Go ahead and share your screen.
1 second, I'm gonna send it.
You posted me and now you're auto updating. Awesome. I got it wrong.
Okay, so Control C in your terminal. Oh, actually, you're missing the code for your endpoint. So you created your endpoint. First of all, you shouldn't have a space in your route. That's going to cause some problems. So you've got my first post endpoint space. Routes cannot have spaces in them. And then you need to say, well, what are you doing in that endpoint? So in the server.get, we got our rec and our res, and then we res.send hello world. So we need to do something similar in the my first post endpoint. We need to tell it what's going to happen when we actually access that endpoint.
Okay. Sorry, I'm.
Be very careful where you're typing.
Okay, I'll just refer back to the live share.
Okay. So let's just take a quick moment to revisit the syntax here. So what we have here, server, where is our server coming from? Our server is coming from right here. What does our server equal? It equals express. Well, where did express come from? Oh, that came from here. Where did that come from? Oh, require, that came all the way from our NPM. So whenever we access server, what we're doing is saying, hey, this is an express server. Okay, now that we've got that going, express needs to be told, what do you want to do? So far, we have used 3 different express methods. One is get, one is post, and finally, listen. Okay, get is saying when a get request comes in, what do you want to do? Same thing for a post request. And finally, listen is saying, okay, tell me what port I should be listening on. What should I be expecting requests to come in on? But all of these methods need additional information to work. Those are our parameters or our arguments. Now, get and post, the first parameter or argument is the route. What route would you like to come in when you're sending data to a URL? What URL should this happen on? So we name our routes whatever we want so that when we make our request, the route lines up. Okay, now that we have our route, the next piece of information that Express is saying is, well, what do you want to do with it? So Express gives us the request and the response. Now, we haven't used the request yet. We've said, I don't care what's coming in, as long as it's the right method type, and as long as the route is correct, what we want to do is in the response, send back this hello world. Same for down here. We said, if a post request comes into the URL, my first endpoint, we're going to get the request and the response. And once we get those, anything between these curly braces is what's going to run. So what's going to run in our post request here is it's going to take the response, and in the response, it's going to send back, you posted me. We have 7 votes in. I would love to get to like 9. So give everyone just 1 more minute before we move forward here.
Can you show Postman again? Okay.
Now, it's important to note here, there's no way we could test this in the browser without having to write some code, right? When we play around with this here, we can just set it to post, but we can't go to our browser and go to my first endpoint, because whatever we load this endpoint, it is assuming it is a GET request. So there's no way to make a post request in the browser without having to write some code, which we're about to do in a second. Eight votes in. I would love to get to 9 in the poll. One more person I'm holding out for. If you've not voted in the Zoom poll, please do.
Can you go back to the code really quick? If I'm still not getting like a response in my Postman, like what could that mean?
Share your screen. You've stopped your server in the terminal, so you need to hit up enter to restart it.
Should I just press enter if everything
So hit up once.
did? It's gonna do this. I already did this.
Okay. The command to start your server, clear that out, is npx space node1. Enter. Now your server is running, and we know the server is still running and not in the background because we didn't see this all over again. You see right in here, it's like still blank. That means that your server is running in the background. So now if you go over to Postman, and hit send, it's going to say in the response, you got to pull that window so it's bigger. It says couldn't get response. First of all, where you put HTTPS, but we don't have encryption set up, so we have to do HTTP. Now, if you hit send, it's going to say error, and if you scroll down a little bit more, it's going to say cannot get my first post endpoint. What is the oxymoron in that? You got it. There
Thank
go.
you.
All right, let's move forward to our next step here. So we've got our first endpoints set up, but our API doesn't do us much good if we're just playing around in Postman, right? We need some place that we can use this. So we are about to cross a boundary and become full stack developers here. So please contain your excitement as we build out a front end to use our back end. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our terminal after I share my screen. We're back in our terminal. Now, if you already have your terminal open, feel free to CD around, but I need to get all the way down to my code. So I'm going to say on my desktop, I've got my code folder. My code folder, I've got a week 16, and in week 16, I've got a day 3. So all of that CDing down, I just did in one very long command, and I just used my tab key. So now when I PWD, you can see I went to my desktop, to my code, to my week 16, to my day 3. Now in my day 3, I want to CD space period period enter is going to move you up one folder. So I'm in my day 3 folder. And if I wanted to get up into my week 16 folder, I could just CD space dot dot. And now when I run my PWD, I'm in my week 16. So whenever you want to go up one directory, it is going to be a CD space period period. So I'm going into my day 3 folder. And if I ls, I already have my ad server here. But what I really want is my ad front end. So I'm going to npx create React app. And in my React app, I am going to create my ad front end. And React is a massive thing to install, so it's going to take its sweet time.
Question.
Yep.
So once I get into my week 16 folder,
In your day 3 folder, you want to run npx create React app, because npx create React app is going to create the folder for me. I do not want to create a front end folder. I want create React app to create my ad front end for me.
okay.
So now, after I have created, once I get my happy hacking, if I run my ls, I should have 2 folders created, one called ad server and the other one called ad front end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open space period. That pops open my Finder window for me. And I'm going to take my ad front end and drag it to VS Code. Now we get into some fun. My VS Code, I need both of these windows open. I need my ad server, but we're going to let that go for a second. So I'm just going to minimize that. Now in my ad front end, I'm going to drag this window open a little bit. I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm going to open a new terminal and I'm going to npm run start. I'm going to hit enter in there. I'm going to wait a second, and that should pop open my React app going on here. So let's just take a second and pull to make sure everyone has their React app up and running. npx create -react -app is a script that is created to install React for you and create a new React project.
Mine, when I went to go to VS Code, it started a whole new one.
So you should have 2 windows open right now. One's your ad server and the other window is your React front end.
Oh, so it should be 2.
Yes.
Okay.
I just minimized my server so I'm not accidentally in the wrong project. I will say that window positioning is super important for me. My rule of thumb is the front end always goes on the left side and the back end always goes on the right side. So if you really want to screw with me, just flip the 2 windows around and put one on the left and the other one on the right, and I will be utterly confused because my brain has it set up that the rightmost window is always the back end and the leftmost window is always the front end. So right now you can minimize your back end. We won't be using the back end until after the break. Nicole, the command is npx space create -react -app space add -front end. It's about our 10th time creating a React app. Same way we've always created a new React app. Stephanie, go ahead with your question.
Had the front end part.
I managed to open the folder in the new window for VS Code, but then I don't know what to do next. Like, how did you open terminal?
So you can go terminal up at the top, down to new terminal, or you can right click on package.json and open an integrated terminal.
Oh, so they're both the same thing then, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then what do I do?
npm run start.
npm start. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. And as long as you've got your spinning React logo, just stare at that until it makes you sick until we move on to the next step. Nicole, do you need help or did you get it up?
It was just finished downloading.
Okay.
So npm start.
Npm run start or npm start. Actually, both of them do the same exact thing.
Oh, CD.
Eight votes in, 9 seems to be the magic number tonight. So just waiting for the
I just-
9.
Do you want to look at mine?
Danielle, you should be able to use the web version of Postman. I don't think that that should cause any problems. Nicole, yeah, you can.
So I did CD into add front end and npm start and it works. So.
Okay, so but what you CD'd into was add dash space front end. You need to
Okay.
CD into add front end, all one word. Okay, now you can npm start. And you are officially caught up.
Okay,
Well,
and what?
You
Yeah.
will be once that loads. There you go.
But where's my second window? Do
You have to open it in VS Code.
okay, thanks. You can stop sharing for me.
Okie doke. Moving on to the next step, chugging right up to break time, but we want to keep making progress here. So I am in my VS Code, in my front end. Make sure we are in our React front end project, not in our back end project. We need to set up our interface. So I'm going to go to app.js and I'm going to delete everything that's in the header tag to clear some things out. I'm also going to delete my logo.svg because we are not using that. And I'm going to go into my app.css and nuke everything in there. So now I've got this really nice lightweight. I am going to start a live share for this. Please try to keep track of which live share you're in because you are going to end up with 40 gazillion windows. Unfortunately, no better way of doing that. So just keep track of what live share you have open. You should be able to open both of them, but I am in my app.js. I have deleted everything that was in that header tag. And then in my app.css, I also have cleared that out. So we're going to create our nice first little front end that is going to be our full stack project. I would like to create an interface where you can type in 2 numbers and hit the add button. Now you may say, Max, that is absolutely stupid. Why wouldn't you just add the 2 numbers together in the front end and make the sum show up? Well, because that's not a full stack project. We want our backend server to be able to add those 2 numbers together and then make that sum show up. Yes, I understand this is utterly ridiculous, but this is our first full stack exposure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say input number 1, and that's going to be an input type equals number. And then I am going to have a line break and input number 2 with an input type equals number and another line break. And finally, I'm going to put in a button that says add up. So I go back to my web browser, and now I have this beautiful interface that might be award-winning. Input number 1, input number 2, and add them up. So we're going to do one more push here, and then we will take a break. So I've got my two numbers here. I've got my add 'em up button. Now, what do I want to do? When this button is clicked, I want to take these two numbers and send them to the back end. Whole heck of a lot of work to be able to do that, though. First things first, I want to say on click of the button, I want to add the numbers together. Okay, well, I can't just say add. I need to define what my add function does. Initially, I add my on click. I say, hey, it's going to do this add function when I click. And when I click on that button, it's going to do things up here. But I need to get access to this input type number. How do I know what numbers are actually typed in? Well, for that, we have to use state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const num1 and set num1 is coming from my use state. And my const num2 and my set num2 is also shockingly coming from my use state. Now I need to get my input numbers. Now it's going to say use state is not defined. You're right. I need to import use state from React. Okay, well, we told it to use state, but we're not using our num1 and our set num1 anywhere. We need to wire up our inputs to use the num1 and the set num1 that we created up here. So we do that two ways. We say, hey, the value of this input is going to be num1, and the value, the second input, is going to be num2. And these curly braces are telling our JSX, our React syntax, hey, we're sending you something JavaScript-y here. This isn't going to just be regular HTML anymore. We're sending you num1 from right here. So if I save that, and I come over here and I type in 1, 2, 3, I should be able to click the add 'em up button and get that out. So in my add, if I console log out my num1, I come over here, I refresh, I type in 1, 2, 3, add 'em up, I get undefined. Well, we did the first step of adding num1 in here. What's the other thing we need to do to get this input to be fully using our state?
Do we have to unchange, set the state?
We do. We need to say when this number has changed, you're going to get an event. That event is going to set the num1 based off of the event target value. So now we come in here and type in 1, 2, 3. Input type number value. Oh, okay. I'll fix that in a second. And hit add 'em up. Now I get 1, 2, 3 showing up here. So I can take my on change. I'm going to copy that on change and put it down into my second input. And instead of set num1, I'm going to set num2 instead. So in my console log, I should be able to log out num1 and num2. So if I type in 5 and 6 and hit add 'em up, I get 5 and 6 coming out in my console. Now, this is a really annoying thing that says the component is changing from an uncontrolled input to be a controlled input. That's because we didn't tell our use state what values to start at. So we are going to start them at empty strings. And now when we come in here and type in 5 and 8 and hit add 'em up, we get 5 and 8 coming out. Okay, let's do a quick run through of everything in here, and then we will stop for a poll. So our function app, we are going to have one component in our fancy app called app. Create 2 state variables and the functions to update them using state, which we import from React. The empty quotes mean they are starting as an empty string. Create our add function that runs on click of the button. Anything in the return is what shows up in the browser as HTML. Create label. Input for the first number. Bind the value to the state. Make the state update when the input is changed. Oh, were you not going to let me do a comment there? Go old school. Oh, I can't even do that? Come on. Ugly, but that will work. Sorry, just fighting with comment syntax. Then these largely remain the same. Then finally, our on click here is going to say run the add function when the button is clicked. All right, there's a whole heck of a lot of code. I'm going to dump this in the live stream channel. I'm going to start a poll to see how many people were able to get their, oh, it's back here. We should be at the point where we can, in our browser, we can type in a number and a second number and click add them up and get 3 and 7 coming out in the console. We haven't connected to the back end yet. That's coming up next. Right now, we just get a basic user interface set up so that we can get numbers inputted and click a button and get that number out. There's no way I'm going to be able to fit all of this on my screen. I did dump, I can fit most of it, I guess. I did dump the code into the live stream channel in Slack. So if that is easier to read off of, go for that. If anyone is stuck, let me know. We will delay break for a couple minutes just so people can keep going on here. And then we'll break from like 7:05 to 7:25 or whatever. But want to make sure people are caught up to this point.
Max, can you show me what your output look like? Okay, mine's look kind of similar, but I need to fix something, so I'll
If
check.
you can type in 2 inputs, click a button and have those numbers show up in the console, that is good enough for me.
I can type one number in, but that same number show up in both, so I think I messed up a little bit somewhere, so I'm gonna try to fix it.
Yeah, so just be careful. Your value here needs to be num1.
Oh, I think that's where I messed up at.
Yep. You're
Okay.
close. You're really close.
Okay, thanks.
And just be careful that you have value and on change. This needs to say num1, this needs to say set num1, this needs to say num2, and this needs to say set num2.
Yep, I think that's what my issue is right there. Thank you.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Can I share my screen? Because it's giving me a warning in the console here.
Yep. Before you do you have empty quotes in both of your use states?
Yes.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead, share your screen.
Oh, sorry, hold on.
Okay, nothing's jumping out at me initially. Let's see your refresh the whole page. I think, is that an old error? It sure is.
Oh, what the hell? All right, thank you.
All right, we got 8 votes in. That is good enough to go on break for me. So let's go on break. We'll be back at 7:25. And I will be back at like 7:20-ish in case anyone has questions.
Can I ask you a question before we go?
Yeah, go for it.
When we npx nodemon, and that, like, I get that it keeps our index.js server refreshing automatically. How does it know when we install the nodemon? How does it know what file it's watching?
By default, it watches all files in the folder that it was executed in.
Okay, and then does it know that, like, this is a file that's running a server, or will it just automatically save and relaunch any file that changes in the folder?
That.
Thank you.
Yeah, nodemon is a file watcher, and when or it uses another package to watch the files, and when those files change, it automatically restarts the server. There are some more efficient ways of doing that based off of knowing what JavaScript has changed, and React actually uses that under the hood. And you can get into some concepts called hot module reload, HMR. But for the size servers that we are creating, nodemon is just a quick and easy way to reboot the server, and one that I also use at work. Node has tried to start building some of those features into Node itself, and while they are getting there, they still are not quite as easy to use as nodemon itself, which is why we still teach it and use it. I'm sure there are better alternatives, but it's just easy to install and start using.
And is it something that you use for working stuff out, or is that something you'd use in production?
We use it only for local development. For production, there are other process managers that you would use for deploying a node server. One is called PM2. There are a bunch of different ones out there, but we only use nodemon for local development. We do not use it for deploying.
All right, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
I have a couple errors in I can see it in the background, but it's not coming up.
Go ahead and share screen. Okay, so set num1, set num2 is not defined. Where do you have set num1 defined?
Right here,
Well, that's
Oh,
where you
here.
call it. Where do you define it?
right here.
Okay. Do you see a problem there?
It's not light. It's light, but not dark.
Mhm. Where do you call it?
Mm,
You already told me. You were right. Yep.
Right here. Mhm.
Yep. What's that called?
Or then, like, what do you mean by that?
How do you call the function on 18? What's the name of the function?
I set num1
Yep. Okay. Now, where do you pull that out of state?
right over here.
Yep.
This
And what's the name of that function?
Set number 1.
It sure is.
Oh.
Eureka.
Thank you.
Give it a try. See what happens.
It's right up here. It worked.
Cool.
Max, I got a non-related issue.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Gotta stop too. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I was messing around with tops, trying to see if I can get information. And if I go directly to some of the responses I got, then I can see the information. I don't have to sign in with this shop tops URL. But when I try to put it in the same URL in Postman, it tells me that I'm unauthorized. In the browser, I didn't have to sign in or anything.
You might have to schedule a one-on-one for this.
Okay.
I'm wondering, it's definitely something I can help you with, but it's not a 2-minute answer. It's something that we have to dive into the network request and figure out what the browser is sending. Because if the browser is sending, it might be sending like a cookie in the header, which is how you're getting around the authentication.
Okay.
We're just gonna have to play with it, and I think it's just gonna be more than a 2-minute answer.
All right. Thank you.
But it's a good question and one that I do want to help you answer.
All right. I'll set up some time. Thank you.
Cool. Zach, go ahead. And Nicole, I'm coming to you next.
Okay.
When I enter in values for input number 1 and input number 2 and click add them up, nothing shows up in my console.
Share screen. Go to your code. On click add, set num1, value num1. Okay, so on 13, you defined your function add, but you didn't do anything with it. So all you need to do is between those curly braces, do a console.log num1, comma num2. You were so close. You had everything wired up properly. Console.log parentheses. And then num1, comma num2, just lowercase the n. And you will officially be caught up.
Sweet. Thank you.
No problem.
So my question is it supposed to be like just adding the numbers or not adding them together?
No, it's just console logging them at this point.
Okay,
We're
so
going
down
to way overcomplicate this and get a whole API call working to add those two numbers together instead of just changing a comma to a plus in the console log.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. I'll be back at 7:25. So first things first, we got to make our fetch request. So we're going to say fetch. And what are we fetching? Well, we're fetching http://localhost 3001 because the 3001s are backend. And then we are going to fetch something called add. And what we want to do is store that response as our fetch. Now, there are two different ways we've covered this, right? We've covered this with a dot then, and we've covered this with a async await. I'm going to do the async await syntax only because I think that that's a little bit cleaner. So in order to say, hey, our add function is going to use some await code, I need to give it a heads up. So I say, hey, add is going to run some asynchronous code. Then in my await, I can say wait for the fetch to be done. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, hey, once we get the response, it's going to get some data. Where's that data coming from? It's coming from the response JSON. Then we want to console log out that data. Okay, so I go to my browser. I have 3 and 7 typed in. I click add them up, and I get this lovely access fetch localhost 3000 from origin 3000 has been blocked by cores. Okay, well, that's going to be a little problematic. What's happening here is because my backend server port is on 3001 and my front end is on 3000, my API is blocking it. It's saying you're only allowed to access our API if you're on the same port. Well, that's dumb. We need to go tell our React or our Express code, go let that in. So what we do is we go back to our backend, not our front end code. We are back in our add server folder in VS Code. Now in my server, in my terminal, I've got my API servers running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-C to stop the server. Then I am going to npm install a package called cores. Cross origin resource specification. Forget what cores stands for. Something along those lines. Then I'm going to come back up into my code. And once we create the Express server, I'm going to say import cores package from npm. And now I need to tell my server, my Express server, to use the cores package. And what that's doing is it's saying allow for cross-origin requests. Allow, or when that comes in, Express, don't worry about where that origin of the request is. Just send back the data. So I go back to my Chrome. I clear the terminal. I click add them up. Now I've got a different error. Error, connection refused, failed to fetch. Does anyone know what we forgot to do?
Import?
Well, we did our import. Our import's right here. We're requiring it.
Is it the one at the bottom?
What do you mean the one at the bottom?
Did you export it?
Well, we're requiring it from cores, right? So that's coming in from npm. And we npm installed cores, so we know that's not the problem.
Did you have to convert it to JSON or?
We haven't gotten there quite yet.
Okay.
We forgot to start our server back up. Whenever we install a new package, we npm installed it, but our server isn't running anywhere. NodeMon node isn't still running. We had to stop the server to install cores. So whenever we get something like a connection refused, that often means our server just isn't running. So if we go back to our terminal and do our npx NodeMon and hit enter, now I get my API servers running again. So I'm going to go back to my browser. No, I'm not. I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in 2 numbers. I'm going to hit add them up. And now I get a different error. This is where we celebrate different errors because we keep on making progress here. And it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we're getting error after error here. But because we are getting different errors, we actually are making progress here. Okay, we've got a localhost 3001 404 not found. Okay, now we've got another error down here. We don't worry about that. We always worry about errors from the top down. In this situation, we need to fix this 404 before we worry about any of this unexpected in JSON at position 0. Okay, so we come over here and we've got our endpoint for the basic hello world, and we've got a my first post endpoint. But what are we trying to do over here? We're trying to access this add endpoint. We haven't created that yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, server, when a GET request comes in for add, you are going to get a rec and a res, the request and the response. So what we're going to do is just console log out. We made it to the backend. Let's party. And then every endpoint always needs to send something back. We always need to res.send something. But if you look at our front end code, we told it the response is coming back in JSON. So what we need to do is res.send an object back. And that's going to be a message that says, greetings from the backend. Okay. So we go over to our terminal or our browser, I clear it out again. I hit add them up. Whoa. We got things. Not only did we get a message here that says greetings from the backend, we also got a console.log here that says we made it to the backend. Let's party. Okay, that is way more significant than the couple of lines, the only couple of lines that it took to do that. So what happened here? Let me see if I can fit all of this on my screen, and then we will poll and make sure everyone is caught up. We started with a fetch. That fetch went to 3001. We happen to be listening to 3001 down here underneath this terminal. So we use the add endpoint, and that add endpoint lined, yeah, good English, Max, lined up with our GET request for our add endpoint. That fetch said, okay, now we need to run this code. So the console log comes out in our server terminal down here. It's important to keep in mind here that we've got two terminals going on now, or two consoles going on. One is the console for the backend server. That is always going to show up wherever we start our node. But we also have the console that is showing up in the front end. Okay, so now we console logged out. We made it to the backend. In the response, we sent back some JSON. Express automatically converted this JavaScript object to us into JSON for us. Now, where does that response show up? That response shows up in our front end code. This response right here. Now that response, we need to parse the JSON out of it. And once we get that JSON, we get access to the data. Now, when we console log out this data here, it's going to show up in our front end console, but it is going to have our message console log out to our front end. Full stack. You've made it full stack. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to poll because I know that was a whole heck of a lot. And then I'm coming to you, Christy. Oh, no, apparently I'm not. I'm drawing all over my screen instead. All right, Christy, go ahead. You want to share your screen? Hold on.
Unmute. Share screen. So you see down here, mine says NodeMon app crash.
Yep, so scroll up a little bit. It's giving you a not module not found error, and it's saying cannot find module cores. So we're using cores. Cores is a package that's coming in from NPM. What do we have to do before we can use packages from NPM?
NPM run start.
Close. Another NPM command.
Install it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, So
So you have to Control C first to get out of your terminal. Yep. Now you're going to NPM install cores. Enter. And as soon as that's done, now we can npx nodemon to start our server. Enter. And now we got a different issue. So we celebrate that, first of all, because we fixed one problem. Our next problem is that it doesn't understand what res is on line 22. And that is because line 21 and 22 are supposed to be between your curly braces on line 20.
oh, this one.
Mm-hmm.
So so I need to take all of this.
And just stick it at line 23. Okay. Looks like it's running.
Okay.
So now go back to your browser.
Wait a minute.
Easier said than done, huh?
I know, right?
And hit atom up. Okay, now you're probably missing the code in the front end to actually make your fetch request.
Yeah, you know what? When I got stuck here, I didn't put the code in, so I need to go back and do that.
Cool. You're on your way. You're close.
Okay, thanks.
We got 6 votes in, so we're going to give everyone just a couple more minutes to work on this.
I'm a tad bit behind, but can you tell me why like my recs are light again? They're lighter than my res.
Recs we aren't using yet, so that is actually intended to be lighter.
Okay, thank you.
Should I be getting the error message?
No.
Connection refused.
No. Did you have to make sure that in your terminal for your backend project that you've got npx nodemon running?
Yes, it is running.
Okay, share your screen. No, it most certainly is not running. Scroll down.
Nope, it's not.
Whenever you see your laptop name and your username as the last command, that means it is not running. So the last command you tried to run was npm nodemon, and it said, don't know what that is. Try again. Your command that you need to run is npx nodemon. We use npm to set up new projects, and to install packages, we use npx to run or execute commands. Okay, now your server is running. So now go to your front end and yep. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Don't forget to vote in the poll if you were able to get it working. If you have questions, let me know. If you were able to get it working, make sure that you can understand and trace path through what order this code runs in. Where does this data get sent? What order does this all execute in? we're able to get it all working. Ponder, what does it say about your instructor that this is his favorite class to teach? Hopefully not followed up by the thought of, well, what does it say if this is his favorite class and I still don't get it?
So is Node.js, I guess I'm guessing that it's equivalent to JSON. Node.js is the backend JSON and
Node.js is a server that is sending data back using JSON.
Okay. So it's a server, it's not a, because the verbiage is the same. That's why I'm just trying to.
So it is JavaScript in the front end, it is JavaScript in the back end. Node.js is a server that executes JavaScript code. But when we send the data in that res.send and we send the object, Express is converting that into JSON for us so that when it gets back to the front end, we can parse out that data using JSON and then console log it out.
Okay. So how many monitors do we actually need? 'Cause today is the last day of Amazon Prime days. Do we need 4, 5? I just need to know.
So my work setup is I work off of two 27-inch 4K monitors. I actually have a blog post up on my blog of what my whole desk setup is and all of that equipment. I will caution you, 4K will ruin you because once you get used to a 4K screen, any HD screen that you look at, your eyes will start to weep and then blood will just start to pour from them. No, I'm just kidding. That's a little overboard. But once you get used to a 4K monitor, you are very spoiled. You don't realize how much easier text is to read until you read it on a 4K monitor. And then going back to HD is just painful because it's literally 4 times less the resolution. I will caution you on a 4K display. If you can afford one, they are fantastic. But you definitely get used to a high standard. When I am teaching, I do use my laptop monitor because if I shared a 27-inch monitor on your 13-inch monitors, you would all need magnifying glasses because it's just a lot of screen that I'm sharing on your very smaller screens. So that is why I share my laptop monitor instead, just to make it easier for you guys to read the code. But there are very few times at work where I do not find myself needing a third monitor. Most of the time, I just work off my two 27-inch monitors. I've been doing that for the past 5-ish years, I will say. Before that, I did have 3 24-inch monitors, and I really like that setup as well. I am partial to 2 27-inch monitors now over 3 24-inch monitors, but it's all personal preference at that point. Biggest advice I can give you is if you can splurge for 4K, go for it. But do not spend under $300 on a 4K monitor because it will not last more than a couple years. They are just expensive. It's a lot of pixels to drive there. So you're going to want to be in that $300 price point if you go for a 27-inch 4K monitor.
Oh, go ahead, Larry.
How do you hook up to 2 monitors at the same time?
You have to be careful on the laptops you have. I'm not sure if the M1s support it. I've got a USB-C dock that has 2 display ports on them, which is essentially HDMI. And then that's what splits it and drives it. I do have a slightly higher end laptop than the ones that you guys have. So you would have to check with Apple and make sure that it supports 2 external monitors before you invest in something like that.
Thank you.
Zach, I'm going to open your link to figure out. Oh, yes. That is very much, let me put it like this. I don't have a light on in my office when it gets to 8:30 and I'm still teaching because my monitors are so large. The monitors light my face, and that is enough to have enough light for the web camera. So yes, I have two very large monitors. At a certain point, I stopped referring to my desk as a desk, and it is now a command station because I spend a third of my life behind this desk and these monitors. So it is definitely worth investing in your battle station. I don't know if I have a recent picture of it. You should see me when I travel. It is quite comical because I have like huge monitors. I actually have like cases for my monitors. So when I do travel, I can bring all of that with me. I do not travel light, but let me just grab a link to, I've been meaning to do an update on this for a while, but this was my previous setup, and I've got a link to a picture in there and a link to all of my hardware. It has changed since that blog post, but just to give you an idea of what I'm working with. Okay, we got 8 votes in, so I think we are good to keep going. Any questions about the flow or anything? Nicole, I think you had your hand up at some point.
I just wanted to just ask, it doesn't matter, like in my code, I have like basically like it's just a little bit out of order from yours, but it won't matter, just it still will work, right?
As long as you're getting greetings from the backend to show up in your console, that's fine.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute.
All right, so let's keep trucking here. All right, so we've got greetings from the backend, but we want to take our numbers that we worked so hard to get access to from our state and send it to the backend. So we are going to start by using what is called a route parameter. So instead of using these quotes here, I'm going to switch it to backticks because I want to use our template literal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send in num1 / num2. Now, the syntax on this is very, very important. Everything is going to break unless you get this right. So make sure you've got a slash after your word num. Make sure you've got a slash between num1 and num2. Make sure your $ curly braces are lining up, and make sure you are using backticks underneath the escape key instead of your quotes. If something goes wrong, there's a 90% chance that you get it wrong here. So make sure this line is exactly like mine, with the $, with the curly braces, with num1, with the slashes between them, all of that stuff. Okay. We've got our numbers. They're getting sent in. Now we need to work with them in our backend. So in our backend, we need to tell Express, hey, 2 numbers are coming in there. So we add a slash in, and then we do a colon, and we say num1. What that is doing is it is telling Express, hey, instead of the word num1 coming in there is actually going to be a number sent in that we will want to get access to. We are also going to do a slash, and you're going to get the second number in there. So in our request, we're going to modify it a little bit, and we just want to console log something else out. So I'm going to do a console log here, and I am going to console log out my rec, and I'm going to say in my params, I get access to num1. I also want to console log out my params num2. Okay, this num1 is lining up with this num1 here. This colon is saying, hey, this is a route parameter coming in. It's not actually going to be the word num1. There's going to be a number sent in there. Now our rec is coming from express. We get access to our rec. This rec lines up with this rec. That is the actual request, the details about the fetch request coming in. We use this query, this key called params. That is saying, hey, this is the part of the request that we care about. And then finally, we use num1 so it lines up here, and num2 so it lines up here. Okay, so if I go into my Chrome and I pull this open a little bit, I'm going to go to the network tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear everything out that's already in here. And I'm going to click the Atom Up button. And what we have down here is 7. Okay, well, I want more details about 7. So I'm going to click on it, and you can see what the request URL is here. The localhost 3001, go to add, and the number 3 and the number 7 are between our slashes. Okay, well, I have 3 and 7 typed in as my numbers here. That went into my template literal here, and num1 got dropped in as 3, and num2 got dropped in as 7. So I go to my backend code, and now I have 3 and 7 showing up in my backend. So instead of sending back my message, greetings from the backend, I'm going to send back the sum instead. So my sum is going to take rec.params.num1, and it is going to add rec.params.num2. So I go to my browser, I click add them up, I go to my console, and my sum is a lovely 37. Okay, well, last time I checked, 3 plus 7 was not 37. What's happening there? Well, by default, all route parameters that come in are a string. Express does not do any parsing for us. Express says whatever's coming in num1, we just assume that it's a string. So what we need to do is we need to parse the integer coming in so we convert num1 as a string into an actual number. And we need to also do that on our num2. So now our sum is taking the params num1, which is actually a string, and converting it into a number. We are also doing that on our num2. We convert our num2 string into an actual number. Okay, come over here. Now when I click add them up, my sum is now 10. Okay, we're making it almost round trip here. We are making it round trip. We sent some data to the backend. The backend took that data and console logged it out. It recognized that our num1 and our num2 were part of our route. It parsed those numbers out, added those two numbers together, and sent the JSON back with the sum. Then our front end got that response, parsed the JSON out from the response, and console logged out the data. Now we've got one final step. All of that is showing up in our console, but man, wouldn't it be nice to make that sum show up in our interface? So we need to do one final thing. Whenever we've got some data that we want to show up in the interface, we use state. So what we're going to do is we are going to say sum, set sum is equal to use state, and it's going to start out as empty. We come down to our return, and underneath the button, I'm going to do another line break, and I'm going to say your sum is, and I'm going to drop in the sum. Finally, and I'm going to poll in 1 second, I'm going to come up, and instead of console logging out my data, well, in addition to, I'm going to set my sum to the data.sum. Come over here, I type 3, I type 7, I hit sum it up, and my sum is 10. And I do, I don't know, let's get fancy, -1 and 2. Sum it up, and my sum is 1. Full sack, baby. Full sack, baby. Full sack, baby. All right, try to contain your excitement. I'm going to start the poll now. Yes, I'm a little crazy. It's 8 o'clock at night. What do you expect? Stephanie, go ahead.
Let me share my screen. It says I have an error with the line that says add num1, num2 here, line 17. At least I think that's what it's saying.
Ah, yes. Remember what I said of chances are you're going to get something wrong on that specific line? You are missing a slash after the word add.
Ah, I thought I got it. Ugh, okay, thank you.
No problem. Go back to sharing my screen, although we can't really fit everything on the screen at this point, but if it is helpful, I can leave this up.
Can you scroll down to your sum is?
Hey Max, do you normally share the code somewhere?
I in the CIC live stream channel,
Mhm.
there are links to the live shares.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you open the live share, you can get access to all my code.
Thank you.
At this point, it's hard to like copy and paste it all because there's so much in different files. So I just do it all in the live share. Zach, go ahead. You want to share your screen?
It's not giving, it's giving my sum in the console, but it's not displaying it here.
Okay. First of all, I'm really impressed that somehow you've got your virtual background on, but not your camera.
Oh,
Which is fine. It's not a big deal. I just think it's funny that there you go. Okay, so let's go to your add function in the front end. Because we made it round trip to the back end, right? So now you got your sum set up, but now you just need to set your sum based off of the answer in the data. So we're console logging on line 20. So just do a new line after that and say set sum parentheses data.sum. And I think that's your only missing piece. Sure is.
okay. Thank you.
So, Max,
Yes.
whenever the last part your sum goes here and I type that code in,
Yep.
it breaks my code.
Share your screen, and then Larry, I'm coming to you next, and then Christy,
Okay, 1 second.
and then Nicole, and then Scadia. Okay, so sum is not defined. Where are we defining sum? Where does sum come from? Look at my code. Where did sum come from?
Oh, didn't see that.
And keep going up a little bit more. And your answer lies on line 11.
I didn't see that. Okay, I'll put that in.
The one of the things that I love about Zoom is when you raise your hands, it does it in the right order. So like I'm able to tell. Larry, you're up.
Let's see, desktop 2. All right, so when I try to run it, it tells me uncop promise.
Type in 2 numbers for me.
6, 5. Oh, okay.
So we could get into error handling, but that might be a little too advanced for day 1 of Express. But we will work our way up to that.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Christy, you're up.
I think I fixed it. Let me see. Yeah, I think I fixed it.
Christy, you're not up. Nicole, you are.
I just got like a million errors, so I'm trying to figure out where.
Well, your back end is running, so that's good news. Now get your React started there and let's work through those. Npm start. Yep.
Well, I have it up in the next one over.
Oh, okay. Go to
One
that
sec.
other one and hit Control-C in it.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
then start it in the other one, just so it's easier to maintain the windows.
So, 1 second. I'm trying to. It's right here. Mm.
Okay. First one's an easy one. It's saying, notice it's pointing to await.
Yeah.
So go to that spot in your code. And you're using an await, but what's the rule with await? What do we have to do before we can use await?
Response. Oh, there's another. I know the word.
We have to put in async, right?
Yeah, async. That's the word.
So that's going to go after the equals in the const add, because we've got to tell it, hey, this whole function has some awaited code in it.
Okay.
So line 8, right after that equal, but before the parenthesis. Right there. Yep, put in async. Okay, and save. And let's see what the next error is. Okay, so now you've got a problem. Line 11, response is not defined. So we look at line 11, and we've got response there. Where is response coming from? Yep.
Response.
Okay.
Okay.
Drum roll, please. Yay.
Yay. Thank you.
Problem. Scotty, you're up.
Okay, so I think I messed up something. We're gonna try to figure it out. And bear with me because my stuff is like all over the place. So
Ooh, you got a 500 internal server error. So an internal server error usually means that your backend is broken.
okay.
So let's start there. Let's go to your VS Code with your backend.
Okay.
Nope, that's front end.
Okay, now let's try to locate. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so now you've got an issue. Look at your backend terminal.
Yes. So I think when I was loading packages, like the core, is it called course? I think I did something odd with that, I think.
So scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Yes.
Okay, and then scroll up to the top of this error itself. And it says, keep going, stop. Cannot read properties undefined, reading num1. So where do we read num1?
Num1 is back in the,
So S missing in params, I think.
Oh, Nicole, you ruined all the fun.
I'm sorry.
And you're also missing an S in request in the res.
in the res.
17.
I see, right? Okay.
Now I'm ruining all the fun. Okay. Save, scroll down all the way to the bottom in your terminal. And now you have no errors. So that's a win. Let's go back to the browser and see if we can get those two numbers to add together. That's fine. We can fix that in a second. Boom. Okay, so last thing, and this is just a quick cleanup. This warning is really annoying. So if you go to your front end code and go up to the use state, which is towards the top, just put empty quotes on lines 9 and 10 between those parentheses. And that will shut React up about it not having a value.
Okay.
And now if you refresh, you will not only get rid of your warning in the console, but you are now completely caught up.
Thank you. Thanks.
No problem. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, sorry, I was applauding. I meant to raise my hand.
We celebrate and have questions.
Yes. Oh, why do we not need to set an initial state to sum?
Because it is not used as an input. So we need to set the initial state for the input, because otherwise React thinks we are moving it from what we call an uncontrolled input to a controlled input. A controlled input is anything that has a value stored in state and a matching on change. The problem is we want controlled inputs, right? We want to be able to get that value out of there, but it does not detect that it is a controlled input because there is nothing set in state for the initial value. So that's why React thinks, oh, we're changing this from an uncontrolled input to a controlled input, because the first time this render happened, there was nothing in the value. So the way we solve for that is we say, hey, the first value in the use state is going to be an empty string. And now React is like, oh, an empty string is not nothing. There is some value in there, so it must be a controlled input.
And what makes a controlled, because the
controlled input,
num1 and num2, they get changed by the function in the onChange event.
Correct. So a controlled input is just an input that has an on change and a value, usually that come from state.
Okay.
An uncontrolled input is an input that we don't set the value or the on change on ourselves. So by default, whenever we create an input and we don't put an on change and value on it to get started, that is what is considered an uncontrolled input. In other words, React is not controlling it, the browser is. But when we put the value and the on change on it, and the value is not null, that is what React now controls and says, hey, we're controlling that value and taking care of the on change.
And does that mean controlling it as part of the interface? Because is set sum not controlling sum in the add function?
It means that React is controlling the value of the input. So when we add that value on there and we don't have a initial value in for the use state, React does not think it is controlling the input because it does not have a value in it.
Okay, I think I get it.
If you don't, that's okay. This is, it's basically React does not like inputs to have null values. That is the oversimplification of it, right? So when we give React a null value for the value, it does not think it is controlling the input. And then when we set it on the on change, now all of a sudden React is cranky with us because it's like, well, now this input has a value. So now this went from an uncontrolled input to a controlled input. We don't like that. If you're going to have a controlled input, make sure it is a controlled input from the beginning and the first time we show the input. So the way we solve for that is we use an empty string, and now it knows, hey, that value, we want it to start as an empty string, but now because it has a value and the on change, it is officially a controlled input.
Okay, I understand that much. Thank you.
Great, because that's all I understand. All right, we've got 7 votes in. I'm looking for 8. Is there one more person I can help get to the finish line?
The poll is missing, so I wasn't able to vote.
You are number 9. Congratulations. Moving on. Okay. So there are 2 more things I want to touch on, and then we are done for the evening. We used route parameters here, and those are cool, but there are 2 other ways we can send data to our backend. I revised that statement. There are 2 other common ways we can send data to our backend that we're going to cover. I'm sure there are other ways, but one other way is to use route parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say server get, and we are going to create an add 2. But add 2 is going to get number 1 and number 2 a little differently. It's still going to have a rec and a res, a request and a response. The res is still going to send back an object with the sum. And we still need to parse the int from there. But what we are going to do is instead of using rec.params, we are going to use rec.query. And that query is going to still get num1, and it's still going to add the parse int of rec.query.num2. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to actually comment out my whole response, and I'm just going to copy and paste it. So now, instead of going to our add endpoint, we're just going to go to add 2. But now, does anyone remember the special character that we use for our query parameters?
$ curly brace.
That's a template literal. We are going to use those.
Question mark.
We're going to use the question mark. And now the question mark takes key value pairs. The key is num1. The value is separated by an equal, and then we pass in num1. Now to use another key value pair instead of another question mark, any subsequent value, we use an ampersand, and we are going to say num2 is equal to our template literal num2. Now I go back to my browser, I refresh, I type in 5 and 6, I add it up, sum is 11. Nothing looks like it changed. But if we go to the network tab, and I'm just going to pull this up a little bit, and I go down, look at how my name has changed here. If I click on this, I can see what the request URL is. Now our request URL has changed a little bit. We're going to add 2, but we are sending in our data a little differently. Instead of sending in the 5 and the 6 as part of the route, now we are sending it in as query parameters. And Express knows those are query parameters because we put the question mark in. And it knows what the name of the query parameter is because we defined num1. And then it knows what the value is because we put an equal there. So that seems really simple. It seems like a little change, but that is number 2 way that we can send in data a little differently from our front end to our back end. Stephanie, go ahead.
I'm not sure how you're getting to that headers portion in the browser. I clicked network, but I don't know how to.
So is there a kind of a, just share your screen.
Okay.
Okay, so click add to.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
It seems like a dumb question. That means someone else probably also had it as well.
Hey, Max, what did you call that process for this way to send the data?
Query parameters.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I thought you said wrap parameters. Thank you.
Oh, the query parameters come in from our request. So when we get our query parameters out, they are part of the request, just like when we get our route parameters out, ROUTE, they come out of the request as well. So this way is using our route parameters.
Oh, okay.
And this one is using our query parameters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got it our last way, and then I may even let you guys out a whole 5 minutes early tonight. Maybe.
But when you get in a 404 error message, what's
Make
that?
sure that this line lines up on line 20. Make sure you've got your question mark. Make sure that it says add to. And
Right.
then over here, check to make sure that your server.get add to is the same over here. And if it isn't, I'm going to come back to you in like 3 minutes, Wayne, because I really want to get this over the finish line. So we did our query parameters. We did route parameters. What was the final way that we learned or that Ryan taught for sending data?
Post.
Post. And when we use post, where do we send the data?
It's an object.
In the...
It's an object. I forget what it's called. Options? No.
Header.
The other place other than the headers, I was afraid
Body.
someone was going to ask that. The body. There you go. You got it. Okay. So we're going to do one final test here. We are going to copy and paste our fetch, but now we run into an interesting spot because we can't use a body in a get. Don't ask me why, but the get request cannot contain a body. So now what we need to do is put a comma here, and we have to give our fetch some additional information. So we need to say, hey, the method we are going to use is a post request. We are then going to post to add 3. So in our backend, now we need to do a server.post add 3. It's going to have a rec and a res. And it's going to res.send our sum. And now we need to get our sum. So we just said it's coming in the body, right? So we're going to say rec.body num1 plus rec.body.num2. Okay. Our back end appears to be done. Our front end now needs to send some additional information. And it's sending that information in the body. And what we're going to send in the body is sum1 and sum2. Okay. So I go to my browser and I immediately get an error that sum1 and sum2 are not defined because it should be num1 and num2. Somehow did in the back end, but not in the front end. And now I do 5 and 4 and I add them up. and I get this lovely 500 internal server error. Okay, 500 means nothing actually went wrong in the front end, shit broke in the back end. So what we need to do is go to the back end terminal, because the back end terminal is going to clue us on to what went wrong. And it says cannot read properties of undefined, reading num1. Well, it turns out Express doesn't give us access to the body directly. We need to give Express a heads up and say, hey, the body is coming in as some JSON. So what we do is we Control-C out of our server, we npm install, and we are going to install a new package called body parser. And what do we think body parser is going to do? It is going to take the JSON and parse it out into an object that we can use. So much like cores, what we are going to do, I npx nodemon again to start my server up, and we are going to say const body parser equals require body parser. And then we're going to tell our server, hey, use our body parser. And what the data we're expecting is JSON. Okay, I come down here. I clear my console. I hit add them up. Now I got a sum of null. Well, that's kind of interesting. Okay, well, let me go to my network tab. I'm going to open up this 200. And I see a post to add 3. And it 200 it. It came back from the server that everything was fine. Now in my request headers, okay, so something's going wrong. So let's go back to our server code, and I am going to console.log my rec.body. I want to see what's going on in my body. So I come over here, I hit add them up again. And what do I get over here? I get an empty object. Okay. Well, Express needs a little help. It needs to be told in the request, hey, the headers are describing what is happening in the, what kind of data is coming in this request. And what we need to do is set our content type in the headers to describe what's going on in the body. So we are going to set our content type to application JSON. What we're doing is we're telling our front end, hey, when you send in this body, the way you're sending it in is JSON. So I come back over here, I add them up, I come over here, and now
in 15, their heart rate is going up into 1.
Now I get a syntax error, unexpected O in JSON at position 1. This is the last thing we need to cover tonight. What data type is num1, num2 that I have highlighted there?
Is it a string until you parse it, or?
Yeah, you're on the right line, or on the right line of thinking. That is an object.
Oh, yeah.
But when we think about JavaScript object notation, object is in the name of the freaking thing, but JavaScript object notation is actually a string. What we need to do is we need to take our object and convert it to JSON, which is a string. So all we need to do is JSON.stringify our object, because the internet turns out really bad at sending objects back and forth, but it is really good at sending strings back and forth. So this is a multi-part thing. First, we've got to take our object and make it a string. Then in our headers, we need to say, heads up, the data type that we're sending you is JSON. And then we need to tell our Express, hey, we're using body parser to parse our JSON string into an object. And finally, we can use our rec.body that is now parsed out as JSON to do the work that we want. So I come back to Chrome, I add them up, and I get my sum is 50 freaking 3. Okay, the last thing we need to do is add in our parse ints. And just to show that we can do that on either side, let's do that on the front end for once. Come back over here, I add them up, my sum is 8. We are done for the night. Nicole, you've got an entire minute back before the end of class. You know that was a lot. I will stick around here to answer any questions. If you are like, screw this, you went to the 1 minute to the end of class, that is fine. Feel free to schedule a one-on-one with me, but we are not done with these full stack concepts. So we will keep practicing with all of these. We're going to create a new project from scratch tomorrow. We're going to go into our chat app and we're going to get data start to go back and forth with our chat app. And just when you're feeling good about your full stack, we're layering in the database and we're getting our SQL back into our JavaScript code. And just when you're done with that, we've got another full stack project coming your way. And then when you're really sick of me, we bring Nathan back in and we go back into DevOps and you get an entire week off of me. That is where we are headed. Got a full day tomorrow of more full stack practice, but your homework for tonight is not to get all of this code running. For the first time ever, you can copy and paste all of my code. What your homework assignment is going to be is to add comments to the front end and back end files to show that you understand how the flow of this data is working. So I'm going to create this homework assignment in Canvas. I'm going to give you my app.js file, and I'm going to give you my index.js file. And your job is to use comments like these to comment out how it is working. Bonus points if you number your comments. What order is this code running in? That's how you get a 3 on the assignment, but I will get that posted tonight, and that should be up by 9 o'clock. All of that said, like I said, I will stick around to help you guys catch up. If you feel like your brain is fried, I taught this well. If you do not feel like your brain is fried, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with you. This is a lot of concepts that we're sending your way.
I need to share my screen, Max.
Yep.
Let's see, desktop 2. Let's see. So I'm getting this error in the console.
Okay, so it's a 500, which means it is a problem in your backend code.
Okay. And it's your code, so let me share my other screen.
Okay.
And it's a problem in my backend code.
Add 3, your rec.body. Did you get body parser set up?
You know what? That's it. Thank
That's
you.
what you're missing.
All right.
Christy, you're up.
That was the same thing. I missed that part when you we did the body parser. So when we were on the ad server, right?
On the server, lines 8 and 9 is when we did body parser in my code. Just don't forget to npm install body-parser.
Oh, okay, that's what I need to know.
And the npm body dash that goes in the front end.
Backend.
Oh.
Now, before I get road runners on everyone's feedback surveys, just because I went fast in the last 10 minutes, you will get sick of installing body parser and getting practice using it. We will be using body parser in all of our backend projects. So if you feel like it went fast, especially the last couple minutes of class tonight, you are going to get practice sending data to the backend over and over and over again. So if you do not feel like you're grasping this in its entirety, that is completely okay.
So,
Nicole, go ahead. And then Christy, I'll come back to you.
So I just had missed that one, so it was npm run body parser.
NPM install.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Doug, you're up.
Then to relaunch NodeMon, it's just npx NodeMon.
NPX space nodemon enter. Yes.
Hopefully that'll get rid of my last error.
Fingers crossed.
That did nothing. Is it?
Okay, Nicole, share your screen.
Okay.
You good, Doug?
Yes.
Beautiful. You have to control C out of your server to stop it, Nicole, before you can install packages.
Control C.
Now
No.
you can npm install body parser. Don't forget your second L. And it's body dash parser with no space.
Actually, you said we get extra points
Thank
for
you.
numbering it. You mean like
Literally at the first line of your comment, just do like number 4 : and then explain what number 4 is doing.
okay.
But in the order of, I put my input in here. Now my on change runs. That's number 2. Okay, now the button gets clicked on. That's number 3. Okay, now we make the fetch request. That's number 4. But you would think the response.json is number 5, but number 5 really happens over in the back end, right? So number 5 is now, okay, now it matches up on this route. Okay, number 6 is now it parses the numbers. Number 7 is it sends it back, which means number 8 is back over on your front end where you do your response.json.
Okay, thank you.
can I share my screen?
Yep.
Screen.
And you guys are welcome to get out of here. Don't feel like you have to stick around. I always hated it when college professors were like, I had another 10 minutes to go. It's like, well, too bad. Class is scheduled at this time.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so clear your console, Christy.
Like this.
That's one way to do it. The other way is there's a little like do not enter sign right here. That will also clear it for you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, type in 2 numbers and click add them up. I just want to make sure that we don't have an old error. Okay, so we got connection refused. That means your server is not running. So go back to your backend.
So that's add server.
That's add server. And now look what's going on at the bottom of that terminal. You've got a new command prompt right here. So that command prompt means your server isn't running. So you need to start it again with npm run start.
But
I'm sorry, npx space nodemon.
So do I do a control C?
You don't need to do a control C because the server is already stopped.
Okay, so npx NodeMon.
Yep. And now before hit enter on that. But we know that the server is started because you see this character down here. What you don't have is this whole name of your computer add server %. So this one up here is saying, hey, I'm ready for a new command to be written in. But because we don't have that here, that means it isn't expecting a new command, which means the server must be running.
Okay, so it's just the
Hopefully.
server thing.
Add them up. Let's see what happens.
Woo!
Okay. Well, you're close. The sum is null, which means we go back to your backend code. You got all of body parser. You need to put a parse int around this here and around this here. You need 2 parse ints.
And put that in a parentheses like up here.
Yeah, just actually, you know what? You can just copy that whole line. Like all of 25.
Oh.
and paste that on top of 34. And then change params in both locations to body.
Is there supposed to be parentheses? Because I thought you didn't have parentheses on one of them.
No, Christie's code looks right. Okay, now we've got one more problem. Go to your front end. That's my back end.
That's yours too. Hold on, let me see.
No, that's what you just minimized. Is it this one over here?
Back here.
Yeah,
No.
that's it.
This is it? I
Yep.
thought this was yours.
Nope, because
yeah,
yours is missing the headers that we need to add in here.
So wait.
So now you got to find mine.
Yeah, I'm finding your front end. Okay, here's your front end.
Yep, and you just need this headers in yours.
Method post. Oh, so change body to head.
See, I've got body down here, so I add in that headers.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, save. Now go back to your front end in the browser and add them up. Oh, come on. Boo.
22 on app.js.
Yeah, I lied. There's one more step. Right here, type JSON in all capitals. Oh, move your cursor there first. JSON in all caps. Dot stringify. Stringify. Yep. And then parenthesis before the curly brace. And parenthesis between the comma. Nope. Delete the closing one. The closing one goes right here. Between the comma and the curly brace. Okay, save. And I'm coming out to murder someone if this doesn't actually work.
Let's see.
Hey.
Okay. I need a drink. Okay, thank you. Ooh.
Nicole, you have questions?
Yeah, I think mine was the same thing as hers, so I followed along and I just got 1, 2, and then some 3.
Beautiful.
All right. Have a good night.
Wayne or Sanjay, any final questions?
Good night, everyone.
I'm actually all caught up, so I'm good.
Beautiful. That's what we like to hear. Was my advice at Open Hack on point, Wayne? Is the JavaScript in back end starting to make JavaScript in the front end make a little bit more sense?
Yes, actually.
Good. Awesome. Well, have an awesome night, everyone, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
All right.